you abolished the diaper tax.
The thing is, if you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. Every single one is different.
And you're the dean of the School of Communications at Quinnipiac University for
because it's allowed me to understand education.
Started traveling the country, just training people to understand these disabilities.
That was one of the reasons why I brought you on to discuss that.
Monday night, 8 p.m. EST.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. To all my viewers and subscribers, welcome to episode number 19 with me, Pamela Roth Live. So tonight, you are in for a treat. I am bringing to you from the West Coast, Flobo Boyce. So let me tell you a little bit about Flobo before we bring him on. He is in entertainment. He's actually a live entertainment professional. So he's a DJ, he's an author. If you can imagine it, he's done it. And so he's also from Brooklyn. He's a New York native and he is out on the West Coast. So he goes back and forth between both coasts as much as I do. So we're bi-coastal. So welcome now to Flobo Boyce.
Hey, what's going on? I can't believe it. Pamela Roth Live. So glad to be here, man. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have you.
It's going to be a good old time. And yeah, Brooklyn's always in the house. You know what I mean? No matter where you go on the planet, there's always one guy being like, yeah, from Dyke Heights. Yeah.
You know, it's funny that you mention that because whenever I do a stand-up show, depending on where I'm doing it, I'm always going, I was like, hey, we got Brooklyn in the house, and somebody shouts something out.
Absolutely.
Right, Flobo, you never hear someone say, hey, anybody from Indiana? Because nobody cares about Indiana.
Tumbleweeds, yeah. I think I met a guy from Brooklyn in like Dubai last November. And I was like, what are you doing out here? He's like, oh, the weather. I'm like, yeah, okay. It's just, we're everywhere, man.
Well, not only that, you have no camels in Brooklyn.
That's true. There's a trade-off.
So this is so cool. So I've been reading about you and we were chatting, backstage in the green room, and you have done some pretty amazing things. You too have changed your career and your whole life in 2017. Tell us what happened.
Oh, wow. That is crazy because it's funny that 2017 felt like it was last week, but also felt like it was like 30 years ago. So I was dabbling in comedy since 14, but I was doing the corporate job. I would get up and I would clock in I would drive an hour and a half to my job because I lived in LA, but my job was in Irvine, which is, you know how far that is. But it was cushy because the money was good. You're like, okay, whatever. And it was cool being Batman, like having a night job in comedy and doing the corporate stuff. But on Thanksgiving Day, 2017, I got a call from accounts payable at my job asking which address do I want to disperse my 401k to. And I'm like, wait, why would I want to disperse my 401k? They said, oh, sorry. And they hung up the phone. And it turns out that I was going to be removed or downsized or what have you. So I jumped into DJ work because I was doing that on the side. And right. I had a little bit of like some of the gear. And from 2017, forcibly, I became self-employed because the corporations just said, no, thank you.
Yeah, but something as crazy as it sounds, I went through something very similar about 2 years ago. And so, I'm not practicing as an attorney right now. I'm going to be going back to it soon. But also, you wake up one morning and you're like, I don't have a paycheck coming to me. Like, what am I going to do? And you have to reinvent yourself. And this is what's so amazing. You've done it. I'm doing it. And with the powers that be between video and YouTube and studios and comedy. I mean, comedy has gotten me through a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where if you sat and said, hey, one day I want to start my own business, you have every logical reason not to. But when you're like put out, you're like, okay, now I got to make this work. And sometimes you don't have time for support from your friends and family because you have to eat. And that's so much fun and finding out what works for you. And sometimes you just want to cry, or sometimes you just want to get really mad at a client who almost promises you a gig and disappears. Yeah, sometimes you have to laugh at that. So comedy is definitely a part of that as well.
Something. It's that the smiling face and the drama face that we have to wear at all times.
Oh yeah, it's funny because like if you were of means, you were fine and had time to write. I bet you make more jokes or do more gigs. But then there's that like balance of no, I have to hunt and gather, and then find a way to keep this other plate moving. It really is both worlds at once.
Yeah, it's funny because people ask you, it's like, so what made you go into comedy? I was like, facing eviction and living in my car and pulling off.
Well, it's funny because like as far as like why I did like the different shows and the comedy albums, that was it. But me starting into comedy, I had a near death experience and I was going to die, and I thought that if I survived, then I have to try comedy because you only have one life to live. So to me, I'm playing with house money because I could have gone and worked at Enterprise, run a car. I could have gone to Subway. I could have worked a bellhop at a hotel. So I'm kind of grateful for that. But yeah, it can be a grind when you're looking for gigs to get booked left and right.
Well, that's I mean, listen, like you said, you've been doing comedy from the time you're 14. I've been doing comedy, I think, since I came out of the womb. I think my first words to the doctor was like, "Is this it?"
Yeah.
I think that was my first appearance was, in coming out of my mom. That was when I first made my first initial appearance. And after that, it can only go uphill.
Did it play you on? Dun, 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 dun.
Da, 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 she's here.
You call this a waiter?
It was a standing ovation.
Oh, right.
I got my first standing ovation when I was birthed.
Yeah, they were all standing around, but when you were there, it was an ovation. That's what makes a difference.
But it's crazy because something you kind of develop as you go along to all your circumstances, and that's where you're pulling from for the comedy.
Yeah, I mean, they say that tragedy plus time is comedy, and it's absolutely true. But I will say, if you try to show up with your jokes, and here's my why the chicken crossed the road material, you went booed off stage. So it kind of makes you go insular and go like, okay. You know what? Forget the fans. What do I find funny? Oh crap, that really is funny. Let me say that on stage. And a lot of times I went through talking about like me being an entrepreneur or like me dealing with my family always seems to kill. But when you're trying to be inauthentic and say, hey, look, what's trending on TikTok? Here's a joke. Your crowds will let you know if it's funny or not. Most times it's not. Yeah,
they say, okay, don't do anything from Facebook or from TikTok. Like a canned joke, just like be yourself. Tell us who Flobo is. Go from your inside and just let it out.
But that's definitely changed because like my comedy inspirations, I grew up with old school Seinfeld. I grew up with Jay Leno. They're very observational. They're very topical. But then something really shifted, and we read the back of labels now. You want to know who invested in whose campaign, and we buy some soup at the stores. So they really want to see more of you, and you got to find a way to have a part of your life basically sliced off that you're okay with touching upon every single night for display to make sure that you're authentic to them.
You got to bleed a little bit on stage so they like you.
That's what Hemingway said, right? Writing is easy. You sit down on the typewriter and bleed. That's pretty much what we do.
Walk out all scar battled and everything. And you're like, oh, that was funny. That was great. Come and do it again. Okay, let me slice my wrist for you next time. It's like, was that good? Perfect. It's so original.
Right. Wait, you're not even reacting to that one?
Oh, so what do you think? Going back to comedy and everything else. Remember when there was the slap that was heard around the world?
Oh yeah,
with Will Smith.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about that? I mean, not exactly what he did, but how so many comedians reacted to it afterwards. Because I know I was concerned if somebody's triggered in the audience, what's stopping somebody from running up on the stage while I'm there at the comic strip and smacking me because they don't like it?
Yeah, I mean, that was what I was worried about. Then I was like, man, someone please slap me. I wish I was of note that people cared enough to slap me on stage. But in all seriousness, like I don't know what triggered Will. And if you're upset, I've been there. I mean, you and I are from Brooklyn or we're from New York. Sometimes you do something and someone disrespects you. But to paraphrase Dave Chappelle in his last special, I don't know if you saw that yet. He like the crazy unhinged part is that he sat back down, Will Smith did, and enjoyed his night. He goes, yeah, I slapped the guy. So anyway, the Oscars, am I right? I'm like, you can't do that. If you're that upset, you go home, you leave, you abscond, and then say, I'm sorry, what happened? But of course, violence isn't the answer until it's the answer. So I don't know.
And what do you think right now about everything that's been going on with cancel culture with the comedians? I find it personally. Listen, whatever you may have said 10 years ago, whatever I may have said 12 years ago, it was a different time. We were at a different place in our lives. It was a different political climate. I'm not even going political, but it was just such a different time where you just felt freer to express yourself. Where nowadays, now you're always so concerned about somebody being so sensitive, and they go back into your past and they pull something up from like one of your tapes from 12 years ago. And now you feel you have to apologize for what you said from so long ago.
Yeah, it's a tough thing because there is a euphemism treadmill and things do change and shift. And I always go back to my first year doing comedy here in Los Angeles. I had a joke. Okay, so when comedians first start doing comedy, every comic has their own basic lame set, I call. Like a black comic always has a premise of, I'm black, but I enjoy this. Someone in the LGBT community goes, well, here's my coming out story comedically. Or an Italian would say, oh, my family's so Italian, they do this, right? So my lame set was, I am black, but I am very bougie, and I would fly into Africa. True story. This is the bit. That's how lame it is. I would fly into Africa and ask, where's Chipotle? Right? Harmless. I thought it was absolutely harmless because the butt of the joke was me. But I got pulled aside at the Comedy Store, the Belly Room upstairs,
Right.
by someone who was visiting from Africa and said, you know what? It's so offensive that Americans think that Africa is like this, that. And I say that as an example that sometimes you don't know what the audience is bringing to you on stage, right? If you are going on stage and telling a joke with a premise, a setup, a premise, and a punchline, you can at least say, here's what my intent was, if you're not going to hurt anybody. But at the same time, you can't be gun shy, because the moment you sit down and go, I can't make that joke because I don't know if someone's going to be offended 5 years from now, we've already lost. Like, it's our job to push the envelope and pull back, not pull ourselves out the game before starting. So it is kind of a weird thing. Hopefully it's a pendulum swing where there might be a counterculture who doesn't care much about the cancel stuff, but you can't stop yourself from writing because you don't know who's going to find something offensive, even if you're the subject, if you're the butt of the joke.
Right, because something we stopped putting up. I was having this conversation last night with a friend of mine. It's like we stopped putting up all these restrictions and boundaries, and it's almost like when we were younger and you had to color inside the lines in a coloring book. So now we're restricting ourselves to being inside these so-called lines that we're not putting the black lines there. It's like everybody else is. So now I don't know. Am I in the line? Am I out of the line? Where is the line?
They'll tell you, and the crowds change. Like, there's some clubs in town that are okay, and then you might do a school, and then you go, hey, look, you can't do this and can't do that. Again, if you're not trying to go on stage and be like, these people are like this, while those people are like that, I think that you have a fair game. But again, it's kind of like live rounds. You know what I mean? You're going to offend somebody. You're going to have a bad review if you own a restaurant. You're going to take somebody off at your office. You got to be able to deal with that. Yeah.
You got to roll with the punches.
Mm-hmm.
So who have you worked with over the years? I know, like you said, you've worked in the comedy clubs in LA. I've been to Laugh Factory.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's going. Laugh Factory, my home club is Flappers up there in Burbank. I've done more shows there than anywhere else. I had a show at Flappers I produced a couple of years called No Jokes Barred up there on Thursday nights. And when I first started doing comedy here in LA, I did the Comedy Store for a bit on the Belly Room on Sundays, their Sunday spot. It changed a bunch of times. It was called Horrors on Sunday at first, and then it was called Cadillac, and then it was called Clown, but that spot too. As far as who I worked with, I mean, there's plenty of shows where you had celebrities, comics come on. I went on after Mark Maron. That was kind of scary the first time I did it. And Whitney Cummings and Affion Crockett and Keon Poli. So I can't say that I'm super famous yet, but I have brushes with those who have touched greatness.
No, that's so interesting. It really is. But like, what would you say to, say, an up and coming comic now?
Quit. No, I would say it is a difficult thing because you're fighting not only other comics and spaces. So LA, New York, and Chicago, and Toronto have so many comics. There's also something called bringer shows and paid shows, right? So if you want to practice your craft, you got to put money into a jar for stage time, which is something unheard of if you're in any other cities in the country. So it can be very exhausting after, say, you work all day, you got to put down $10 to get 10 minutes stage time to practice your craft. And then you might find some like shady promoter who's like, oh man, I'll give you a spot, but bring 10 fans who are,
Yes.
and if you don't get that, you can't go on. So it is kind of a scam thing situation there. They do exist. I'm sorry. But the ad time, but when you have the time to always find an opportunity to work on your craft, set that money aside or try to go out of town. Even if you have to buy a PA system and go to a park and do it and do to the cops show up, find times to do it. I go back to Weird Al Yankovic, who I think is a fantastic comedic mind. And you can tell he stopped doing albums. This is my second point. And the reason why he stopped doing albums is not because he's a genius. It's because, well, you're fighting people now on these social media platforms who come up with comedy all the time. TikTok jokes, Vine jokes. And you have to either find something that's very, very subversive or just say, hey, look, you can't really compete with those who can just get their phone and do a 10-minute sketch. So find your lane, double down in your lane, find time to work on your craft, even if you have to pay out for it, and you'll be on your way.
Because I noticed that, when I started doing 6 years now that I'm doing stand-up comedy, and I actually started doing it. Thank you. I actually started doing it after I got divorced. Not because of anything having to do with my ex-husband. It was just kind of like, it was the time for me because now, my son was older and I just was able to free up a lot of time.
Yeah.
And at the time, you're right. Everything at that time was bringer shows. I could give you stage time. You can get 8 minutes if you bring 8 paid people. You get 6 minutes if you bring 6 people. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like out on the street trying to pull people and almost to the point where it's like, listen, it's like, I will buy your ticket. I just need your butt in the seat.
Oh yeah. It sucks. And this is why you look at comedy shows now, there's like a gap. So when you're new and your friends are like, wow, Pamela's doing a thing, let's go check it out. It's so much easier. And if you're famous, everyone buys a ticket because they see your stuff. But when you have that 6 months to, I guess, 10 years, that gap in between, it becomes hard as heck. And I think that's when promoters do know that. And I have pulled people, I have burned friends. In fact, my first 6 months of comedy, and I don't recommend this to anybody, my first 6 months of comedy in LA, I wrote new material every time because I wanted to give my friends a present of coming back to the shows. And that just burns you out because you're not really honing a craft. You're just saying, all right, guys, here's my joke for this week. And that's the kind of the downside of it all. But hey, you're still with it. Go, give it up. Hey.
Yeah, so it's funny. And were you so-called discovered by somebody? I know you said you were doing comedy from the time you're 14, but how did you get your first foray into getting your feet on a stage in a club? Was it New York, California?
Yeah, just so for context, by comedy, I was doing like joke blogs and stuff when I was 14. When I did stand up, so just for a little backstory, I had surgery done. I had I was very, very heavy. I lost a bunch of weight. So I had a surgery to get the skin removed, right? They call it a fleur-de-lis angioplasty. And my suture line had opened up. So I was bleeding on my couch. Now, that's the near-death experience I said earlier. I thought I was going to die. I had a bunch of small regrets. I wish I banged more people. I wish I had more money. But the two big regrets was riding a motorcycle and doing comedy. So when I survived that night, I woke up and I looked for comedy classes. So I'm willing to admit this because some people say, oh man, that's not legit, bro. But I took a comedy class here in Los Angeles for the first 6 weeks. And it was ran by a beautiful man, Adam Barnhart, who opened for Andrew Dice Clay. Went to my high school, by the way, back in the day. And your graduation class was 3 minutes at the Comedy Store in Belly Room. So imagine that. Like you do 6 weeks with this guy and you get to like perform at the most famous venue in town. And so I did that. And it was supposed to be a private invite. It was a public invite on Facebook. 17 friends came out to see me. And I knew that night, that's what I wanted to do. Like seeing a line of people buying a ticket to see you, and you had your material, which at the time you thought was genius, but now you know it's crap. I realized this is what I wanted to do because when they said my name, please welcome to the stage, it was like euphoric, you know what I mean? But it was kind of like one thing after. So to your point, like your divorce, a lot of times we need that huge life nudge to be like, yo, you only got one chance at this, bro. Go out there and do something you want to do.
You got that one chance, that one shot, don't blow it, like Eminem said.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. I know how it is in the green room, right? When you get ready, get yourself in the zone. Like, what do? Do you stretch? Do you do the whole like woosah? Do you like run backstage?
You'll tell you because, well, my first experience, which was mind blowing, was over the years, I had always gone to Dangerfields in the city.
Oh.
And, I saw all these amazing people. And of course, when I was much younger, it was going to all the famous clubs all around the city. I loved David Brenner. It's like I was like such a groupie. I was getting my parents were so good. It's like they would take me to see an envelope open if I asked them.
Right.
So I was like, I want to go see David Brennan. I'm like, okay. So they took me every place, and I'm just like watching all these people, and I'm like, something, that feeling of like being on stage and making people laugh. It was just I want to feel that. So what ends up happening was I met Angel Salazar from Scarface and got to meet with him and everything else. I interviewed him on a podcast, and lo and behold, I'm joking around with him, and he was like, Pam, you're really funny, everything of doing a stand-up comedy. So I was like, it's like, yeah, but like how? But anyway, so he got me into Gladys Simon at the comic strip, and then I was in her development room, which is similar to, like you said, taking a comedy course. But I was in her development room, and you meet every single week, and she's helping you with the material and the timing and everything else. And the first time I actually got to do a show was at Dangerfields.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I was at the time, I was, telling everybody, like, they were like, what name do you go by? I'm like, Pam Roth, New York's funniest lawyer. The pressure was on. And when I got called up onto the stage over there at Dangerfields, it took a second for it to click, like, I'm actually on the stage. I used to sit in the audience to watch all these people. And when I'm getting people, and so many of my friends came. I had like, half of Brooklyn seemed to be in the house,
Hey.
And I was like, Brooklyn in the house, and I'm like, and I think I was like, anyone here from like Kings County? Yeah. Anyone here from Nassau County? Yeah. And then I was like, I said, anyone here from Rikers Island? And everybody's cracking up. But the feeling, Flobo, of getting people to laugh, it's just such a high.
Yeah.
For like the very first time, you're like, wow, I like this. I want to do this. I can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something you really cannot describe. It's like a roller coaster, or the first kiss, or the first time you had an ice cream sundae when you were a kid with sprinkles on top. It's like all of that mixed into that, but then it's like from such hard work. It's like you were in the lab, like hitting a piece of like steel, like a blacksmith, to do that stuff. It's always a cool time. And I always go back to one of the greatest nights of my life. And it was kind of funny watching the video now, because I still have it on YouTube. And I tried doing the comedian's pace back and forth, but the stage was like this big. So I looked like I was like super nervous, and the jokes weren't great. They were kind of like basically knock jokes, but you know what I mean? But it definitely is something that I wish I could bottle up and share to everyone,
Yeah, it's true, because and it's that the feeling that you keep chasing each time, because I want that feeling each time. I want to feel that high of everybody laughing, and like you're connecting with someone. And then of course when you get off stage and everybody's telling you were great, you were funny, can I follow you? I'm like, sure, be my stalker, it's okay.
Well, if you're inviting me to do that, I'm a huge wrestling fan, pro wrestling fan, and a lot of times they would interview guys who retired, and they said, why'd you go so long? I mean, you're like 60 years old. The skin was hanging off your bones. What the heck you were doing? He's like, there's no greater feeling than 20,000 fans chanting your name, or bringing the signs in, or wearing your T-shirt, or believing in you to know that you're a good performer. And I see it now,
But you know what it is too? You become a role model. I mean, you don't even realize it, because people look at you and they're like, wow, if you can leave the corporate world, whether it was voluntarily or you were forced out of it, but it caused you to look inside yourself and say, something, there is something else I want to do, and I'm going to try it. And you took that leap of faith in yourself to go ahead and do it. And here you are, some like 6-7 years later on, 7 years to be precise, that you're still in the game. And not only that, you've come so far. You're an author, which you got to tell us about your book.
Sure.
And you have your own podcast. I think 5.
Yeah, about 4 or 5. Yeah.
So obviously it's working for you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Even though I looked at my bills this weekend, like, oh man, rent's due next week. How is that going to work? Because you're right, because you do get the man, you're inspiring, but you're like, yeah, but I just had ramen for lunch. But okay, it's funny. The analogy is that you're jumping out of a plane, and that's the best thing to describe it, because you're saying, hey, I'm going to jump. Everyone in the world would tell you, what are you, crazy? Don't even do that. Get a real job, buddy. But then when you jump out, and you have a parachute somehow, and you land. It's like, whoa, that's so cool. And it's kind of,
I want to do that again.
yeah, you're gonna do it again. It's like, oh man, you really did it, brother. Oh, good stuff, you know. And I always tell people, I always make fun of them because they see me now with like the things I'm doing in sports, and they go, oh, hey, Flobo, man, I see you, bro. And I'm like, yo, you wasn't seeing me when I was broke. I was broke for like 20 years. What are you doing? But yeah, so there's a book I have written called Graduation Day. I'm so glad you asked me about this. Because when I graduated undergrad, when I graduated down in Florida, my commencement speaker was terrible. He was awful. Like schools were getting like Conan O'Brien and Oprah. We got like a district manager from a Walmart. And I like, this guy is not preparing me for anything. What middle management? That's what I can achieve too, you know? So I always kept in the back of my mind. And I liked my college. We didn't have much, but so I got to be resourceful because I didn't have much. It worked out.
Which school did you go to?
Flagler College. So it's south of Jacksonville, north of Daytona, on the Florida's first coast. Liberal arts school. I think now there's a science program. Like it's like super like liberal arts. Very Southern too. I have to learn that as a Black person, but that's besides the point. So as an adult, I realized that, yeah, I learned some things because of college, but in spite of it as well. And I had a list of misadventures, all of my L's as an adult that I wanted to compile during the pandemic. And so the book is called Graduation Day, Life Lessons from the Real World. And every chapter is something that happened to me as an adult, as a professional, that I kind of like pulled from school, but not because of school, with a life lesson, hopefully to give someone else. So it's been a cool gift to give teenagers or people who came out of college. Like, yeah, your career is not a straight line. You will drop out. Or, hey, look, I went to Italy to save my DJ business because I had to, because it was the only business I had. Here's how I did it. Or, hey, look, when I was 13 years old, I got kicked out of Great Adventure because I was too fat for roller coasters. I lost the weight. Here's how I did it. And it's become kind of like this like weird, you're inspiring me because you are open with how you failed so many times in 10 to 15 years. So, yeah, it's been a pleasure, man, just to hear people and their feedback with that one.
But you know, it's really amazing. Just to give you a little on a personal, when my son was younger, he had started high school and he was a little peanut. You know, I was the only time in my life that I could think of when I was actually taller than him. But now, like, the cat is taller than me. I don't know. It's like, I think I'm shrinking.
Yeah, I hear that. I feel like I'm gonna get
You're shrinking. But you know, like he had joined the wrestling team, and every day he would come home basically crying and telling me, he's like, Mom, I want to get off the wrestling team. I was like, why? He goes, because it's no fun getting my ass kicked. He goes. So I was like, no. I go, you have to stay on the wrestling team. And he was like, but Mom, I'm getting hurt. I was like, Josh, I said, what you have to understand is, I said, in order for you to achieve greatness, you have to have a couple of like knockdowns, setbacks, ass kickings, you know, so to speak. Wow. And so he stayed with it. And I said, there's two words. And I grew up with this mentality of there's like two words that I refuse to ever say. And that's I quit or I can't do it, because there's no such thing as you can't do it. Try it. Try it. You may fail and you want to go back and succeed, but there's no such thing as you can't do it, because can't means physically you can't do something.
Right.
And I motivated him. And I wasn't really being like such a hard ass, but I just figured, you know, something you're going to have to learn in life that, you know, you can't just say no, just try it. And, you know, fast forward, by the time he got into senior year, not only did he have this amazing growth spurt, he became co-captain of the wrestling team and he won silver, bronze, and gold medals.
Yeah.
And I said to him, remember when you wanted to quit when you were in 9th grade? And he was like, I'm glad you made sure that I didn't quit. I was like, you can't quit. And I said, you know something, if you ever watch videos or interviews, for instance, of any of these, let's say the Olympics, the ones who win, I said, you're going to find, I said, they didn't just wake up one day and just become this Olympic athlete. I said, there were setbacks and knockdowns and days that they just wanted to give up. But you just got to pull yourself up. And it's something like you've done after losing your position in 2017. It's something that I've done. You know, you just got to keep reinventing yourself and basically show everybody, you know, something, I'm not going to let this get me down.
That's better than Rocky. Straight up. You're going to get your ass kicked. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Mom. I love it. That's great. No, you're absolutely right.
Thank me, Mom. I mean, I'm going to thank you for getting my ass kicked.
He's got black eyes and saying this sling. He's like, I'm going back.
My mom said I can't quit. I got to move on.
I love it, man. This is why I always say that Brooklyn's a third parent, man. New York is always a third parent because there is that, like, hey, you can't quit. Your parents will let you know if you are a quitter. So when I went to high school, I wanted to be in the football team, and I did quit that. I am totally a wuss, so I cannot be your son.
If I was your mother, I would have made sure you stayed on that team.
But my mom didn't want me to be on it, and this is what she did. She says, "Okay, I'll sign the waiver because even back then it was concussion protocol, right?" Because I'll sign the waiver, but if you quit, you have to join student government. Like, you don't know anything, Mom. Good. And so 10 days later, I signed up for student government. I didn't quit that because that was the deal. So I was in student government for 4 years, came out with like the secretary, like my name's on the plaque on the wall. I went to Madison, which is kind of in the news now for all the wrong reasons.
Wait, you went to Madison High School in Brooklyn?
Yeah, Madhouse. Yeah, baby.
That's
my name
graduated. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Home of the Golden Knights. The Battle of
the Golden Knight on the wrestling team.
Yeah, there we go.
Shout out to Brooklyn in the house.
Hey, take down Midwood. But yeah, I was in the Madison student government. On the back of the auditorium, they had the top 5 like student government positions. In 03, which is when I graduated, I'm on the wall because I did quit because I quit football. Can't quit twice at home.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love that. We got the Golden Knights between us.
Yeah.
That sounds a little weird. Okay.
Well, I mean, like I said, Dice Clay went to our school and Bernie Sanders did, Judge Judy. Like it's the wall distinction was built my junior year. The James Madison Hall distinction was built my junior year.
It's very cool, very cool. But that was the whole thing. It's like, something. So some people, I understand some people give up, but it's like, I just feel like I'm like the cheerleader. I'm like, no, you got to get up. It's okay to have setbacks. We all do. I mean, I had mine, you had yours, but you got to draw from it. And I think that's where I kind of found my strength is to be a chameleon and you got to change.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to. And that was the main thesis of graduation day. Like things coming at you fast and it's how you adapt rather than being like, oh man, this sucks. Because I mean, look, I'm not trying to say that I'm perfect. Like I just said, and I joked, but I'm really serious. There's some months where you are hungry and there's some months where you're too busy. But it's better to understand that's part of the ebbs and flow in it. You are in a boat in the middle of the ocean sometimes. And
it's either eat or be eaten.
Absolutely, Pamela, you're not wrong.
That's how it goes. Listen, even when I was practicing, there were the months where the money would come in and the settlements and everything else, and it was feast or famine, and everything's a roller coaster, whether you're in life, relationship, your health, and you just got to go with it.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you come speeding down those tracks and it just looks like you're going to be hitting rock bottom, and next thing you know, that curve comes along and shoots you right back up.
Absolutely. And that's the fun part. Well, I've learned to appreciate that as fun.
Yes.
there's times you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah. There were many months of like, eating instant soup and noodles.
See, you get it. That's how it is. It's the American dream.
Slipping up those noodles.
Right. I always tell people, if you know the street price of ramen, then you're not necessarily rich. So $3 for $1, dude.
No, they're really good too when you get them over at the dollar store over on Clapper Avenue.
There you go. Which one do you go to?
I can't disclose it because people may know where I am.
Okay, I got you. Fair enough. Let me know after the show. I'm gonna tell my dad.
I'm in the podcast host protection program.
I totally understand it. You can't be seen at a dollar store. I get it.
I go incognito.
Right. Hey, are you Pamela Roth? No.
That reminds me of something really funny. I used to be in the DA's office years ago.
Okay.
As a former prosecutor. And, I wasn't making enough money. I was like literally like the starving new young attorney and all. And it was my first apartment living down in Brooklyn Heights, where even back then the rents were giving me a nosebleed. So I used to look to go to all the different bar association meetings because I always knew they had refreshments and sandwiches there.
Oh, that's a pro hack. Networking events?
It worked. But the funny thing is I ended up getting a side job in a bar. It was a cop run bar, like retired cops. So I knew it was safe. And that evening, somebody had come in that I was in the courtroom with him that day as the prosecutor, and he was the defendant. He was the perp.
Ooh.
He did the perp walk, the whole 9 yards,
Right.
And he's looking at me. He's giving me that like stink eye side eye. He's like, I know you're from somewhere. I was like, no, you don't.
Even if you do, you see nothing.
And he was like, were you in court today? You know, and I was like, oh no, that's my sister. She's the smart one. I have a twin sister. I had to play it off like I suddenly became like the dumb sister who works behind the bar.
Dumb twin sister at a bar. Me at court and the bar the same day. You're crazy.
No. It's like I passed the bar. This one I stopped in.
Right. Did it work?
Yeah, it did. I just kept giving him free drinks. I'm like hoping like if he drank enough, he would forget my face.
Oh, smart. That's actually pretty smart. Wow, that is a very New York story. Like you're at like a Wheeler's bar, just hanging out, and someone's like, "Wait a minute,
Wheeler's is still there.
Is it?
Wheeler's is still there, Sheepshead Bay Road.
Yeah. You know, my buddy Jimmy Bayhead Jr. used to go there all the time because his dad was there almost every night. So you go in there and like rounds by Jimmy Bayhead Sr. It was like a big like local hero.
So how often do you get back to New York, and do you do any comedy in New York?
I've done comedy in New York, a couple of times at the stands here and there. That's kind of like the ones I have the best relationship with. And of course the weird ones like Greenwich. I don't like that. That's cool, but not as cool as the stand. I try to go back every year and a half. I'm a big Cyclones fan, so I try to go back and see the Cyclones play.
Sandy the Seagull.
Yeah, Sandy the Seagull, Pee Wee, and then I don't understand why we have a King Henry, but he's there too. Fine.
Yeah, I know. I don't understand that either.
But let's go Mets. But my dad and we try to go like once. I go like multiple times a year for the games. But my dad and I try to take him out to a game once or so. I realized I can't go back in wintertime anymore. It's not my vibe. So I was there last July 4th. But yeah, I don't have plans for this year. But once a year, maybe once, twice.
You know, it's funny. So your blood gets thinner, I hear, when you leave New York. You go to Florida, you go to California, you get that thin blood.
I would say this, man. Like, I get why we have thin blood here because the houses aren't insulated and there's like 30 degrees of temperature swings. It gets up 50 degrees that night. It's like 75 at 2 p.m. It goes back down to 50. You never know how to dress. I was in Cooperstown last weekend because I had to cover an event at the Hall of Fame. And 12 hours in, my body was like, okay, winter mode. But that first 12 hours, I was like, every year this happens. What's going on, Cooperstown? This is, you know.
So was it safe to say you were going through the changes?
Oh, absolutely. I was like, there's snow on the ground? Not oh, my word. Yeah.
You know, that's what's really strange. You know, being, born and raised in New York, and I lived in Colorado, and I spent a lot of time out in LA. I find that Christmas, when you're not in New York, for me, is kind of weird because Christmas in New York, it's cold, everything's huddled up, and you do smell the chestnuts roasting on the fire. And it covers up the smell of the urine on the corners. So, and you're
oils, yeah.
You're in New York.
Right.
But it's so weird. Like, I've actually been to Christmas in Florida or in California, and it's just kind of bizarre for me to go take a picture with Santa, and he's in swim trunks.
Oh. Well, I mean, that's bizarre, full stop. But no, I'm with you 100%. You know, there's a lady, her name is Elizabeth Chan, and she's known as the queen of Christmas music. Every year she releases a Christmas album. She has a song called Christmas in the City, and she talks about Christmas in New York specifically. And I have to play that song when I'm out here to go, oh, yes, it's Christmas time. Because sometimes you will forget. It'll be 75 and sunny on Christmas Day. And you're like, right. Oh, yeah,
Yeah, people running around in t-shirts and shorts, and they're like saying Merry Christmas, and you're like, it feels like summer.
Yeah. You can imagine living on the other side of the world where it is always summer for Christmas. That must blow their minds.
Yeah, so you got to come to New York. You need the action.
No, I'm good. I will watch from afar. See, my dad, he worked 34 years for Transit Authority, right? So like there's plenty of Christmases he wasn't home because he had to run Christmas service at Coney Island Yard for all the trades and stuff. The week he retired in 2010, huge blizzard that hit New York. And that was the last time I was home to visit my family because I was snowed in for 3 days. I said, never again. So my dad's climbing snow drifts to get to work. It's his last work at the Transit Authority. I'm like, better you than me. And I was stuck in the house. So,
and you were also trapped because you couldn't get flown out.
Couldn't get flown out. And I'm like, my mom's like, let's watch a Hallmark movie. Like, no more Hallmark movies. I was done.
I can never get into those Hallmark movies. One of my girlfriends swears by them. She's like, if you're not doing anything tonight, why don't you turn on like channel 27 to watch a Hallmark movie? And I was like, I'd rather eat dirt. I'm like, I just can't get into it. It's too wholesome. It's not real.
Right. You get it. It's like, wait a minute, they're back together? Like, why?
Exactly. In fact, The other day I think it was like National Spouses Day.
Right.
And I just, I put a post out there on my social media going, oh, it was National Spouses Day. So all the boos, the girlfriends, the side chicks, the pieces, I'm like, you get a night off.
Okay. A holiday for the common man. I love it.
So where can everybody find you these days?
Oh man, underneath the bridge here in Los Angeles. No, I'm just kidding.
Wait, that's a Chili Pepper song.
Right, yeah.
Chili Peppers under the bridge.
Definitely. For karaoke as well, Day California. So flobito.com, flobito.com is the website where I list all of my projects and things I'm working on. You want to hear my voice because frankly, you love the sound of a 10-year-old boy being strangled. I also have a podcast called New Amsterdam Radio where I sit with cool people every Thursday just to talk about their life, their creative endeavors and entrepreneur work. And if you're a baseball fan, like how I'm a baseball fan, let's go Mets, baby. I am a co-contributor to the Black Baseball Mixtape podcast. It's a podcast for people of color, but for everyone as we talk about new transactions and hires and new prospects for Black baseball players and coaches. So I'm all over. You can just Google me as well if you're kind of lazy.
Oh, perfect. So let me ask you this before we sign off. Since you're a Mets fan, what do you think is going to happen in the upcoming Mets season?
Well, last year was definitely a disappointment, even though on paper it seemed cool. But that's always a reminder that it doesn't matter how stacked your team is, you have to win the game. So David Stearns have made all the right moves. I'm totally a nerd. I play this game called Out of the Park Baseball, where you get to simulate being a general manager. They're all the right moves, but they're the most boring, dull moves on the planet. It's why every Mets fan's upset. So you can't do worse than 75 plus games. That's how many games you won last season. I'm thinking mid-80s. Is the playoff team? As of right now, no, but I'm okay with some small incremental jumps if it gets us a ring after almost 40 years. Look, the last time the Mets won a World Series, I was like a year old. I'm a grown-ass man. Please win one more.
It's been that long?
86, yeah. Please. I beg of you. Win one.
Yeah, we got to cheer on those Mets.
Yeah, let's go.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, I have to tell you something. This has been fabulous speaking to you, and
likewise.
It's incredible. I love the vibe and the energy, and you're just terrific. And I love sharing all these stories with you.
I love being on the show. A lot of shows are kind of lame. I'll be honest with you. This one is not. This is really cool.
Thank you so much.
Shout out to your production as well, man. Right there in the back, making all the buttons happen.
Yeah, shout out to Anthony.
Yeah.
Oh, we had a lot of fun this morning while you were in the green room as I'm setting up all my new equipment. And so if you were a fly on the wall, you would have been just cracking up because, I'm not very adept at a lot of things that include plugs. I'm more of a battery operated kind of person.
Okay. Oh, I get okay. I was like, what do you mean? Like we all have strings? Are you solar powered? Okay, I got. I'm slow. I went to public school. Sorry, guys. Take me
Inside joke.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I hear you. I think I'm getting that way too. As the kids come up with their new apps and stuff, I feel like an old man. But the thing about being old is that you never think it's going to happen to you, and then one day you say something like album or record, and they're like, "What, old man? What's a typewriter?"
Exactly. They look at you like, oh, forget about it. You mentioned anything from back in the day that we grew up with, and they look at you, they cock their head to the side like a dog that's confused, like, huh?
Oh, yeah. I dare anyone to tell a kid what a Furby is, or a word processor, or the typewriters in the cases. Remember the case typewriters?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
I remember the very first cell phone I ever had. It looked like a field phone from like the military. Remember how big those damn things were? You could actually hit somebody over the head with it and cause like some serious brain trauma.
It's like the Zach Morris edition. Like, yes, I'm over here at some point.
Can you hear me now? Or even back. Let's go further back. Remember how you had to walk around with enough change in your pocket and find a working payphone that wasn't Stevie when you put it to your ear?
Oh man, you say things like Ma Bell or 9X to a kid now, they don't understand what you're talking about.
Who's Ma Bell? Your mother's name was Bell. Is that Ma Bell?
Yeah, Ma Bell. Best barbecue in Texas. That's.
Oh, we could do this for hours. I love this. Flobo, thank you so very much. And I'm definitely staying in touch with you because I'm going to be coming out to LA probably within the next 2 months.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, we'll get some coffee.
Oh, I would love that. We'll get a coffee and a bagel.
An LA bagel? Okay, I'll power through it for you. I'll power through an LA bagel for you.
Carbs.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much. And again, if everybody wants to follow Flo, he is Flobo, excuse me. It's Flobito at flobito.com. That's at FLOBITO.com on Instagram.
Yeah.
And also just again, and your podcast show is called newamsterdam.com. That's
Yeah.
new as with a K. So it's KNEW Amsterdam.com.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Bobo, thank you so much. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Ciao.